Hello, I'm Judith Richards. I'm the creator of the Richards Trauma Process, or TRTP. Thank you for joining me. I've spoken with many hundreds of mental health and health practitioners in the last few years, and there's a common thread in the conversation. One psychologist put it like this. She said that she often lies awake at night in bed, thinking of particular clients that she hasn't been able to assist, despite her years of education, her years of experience. Her levels of expertise are right up here, but there are some of those clients, and you know the ones I'm talking about, the ones with chronic long-term anxiety, chronic long-term depression and OCD, etc. Those PTSD clients. And she said she'd lie in bed frustrated, and that frustration had become shame. She was actually ashamed that these clients would continue to come to her and she wouldn't be able to help them. And there was the psychiatrist who said that she would sit in front of an extreme PTSD client because that's what she specialised in. And she'd sit in front of this patient who was once again dissociating for yet another session. And she'd sit there impotent, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to assist, knowing that all she could offer was more pharmaceutical prescriptions. I know that there are many watching this presentation who resonate with these stories, and actually that's why you're here. You understand the frustration, the exhaustion, and for some people the shame. So I'd like to tell you that there is a solution. There is a solution. These clients can actually be assisted to the other side of their pain. So what are we talking about here? It's probably best if I just tell you some little stories about what happens to a client once they go through this TRTP process, which is a 3-session process. I'll start with the story of this psychiatrist who rang me a while back. And he said he'd been working with this patient with complex PTSD for 9 years, getting absolutely nowhere. No shifts. Nothing was getting better. He would hospitalise him a lot of the time just to keep him alive. Well, he'd just seen that patient for his normal fortnightly appointment, and this man had walked in completely well. So he asked him, what on earth's happened? And he said what had happened is he went to one of my students, not even a graduate, a student, and had the 3 TRTP sessions, and his PTSD just simply disappeared. And that's what we would expect. That's normal. So he said, I obviously don't know what I'm doing, even though I'm published, I'm an expert, so I better come and learn, because what's happening here is nothing short of miraculous. It's impossible, and yet it's happening. And then there was Jason. Jason had broken his neck 4 times. He didn't have a lot of movement in his upper body. Jason was an angry man. He was a very angry man, and one of the most dangerous people I've ever met. He would snap. He wasn't a plotter. Not like a nasty psychopath. No, he just had extreme PTSD. He was a very, very hurt man. He'd had a horrific childhood. And hurt people hurt people. So there is actually an answer to domestic violence. If we take away the hurt of those who are hurt, they stop hurting people. And that's exactly what happened with Jason. That morning he'd been pulled off trying to strangle his ex-wife. He was hell-bent on killing the new boyfriend, the children. You know the usual story. He'd smashed the windows in her house, he'd smashed the panels in her car, he'd smashed her guitar over his head. So he came in looking a little like Frankenstein, with not much movement and big gashes in his head. He was in a really bad way. He was so angry. And that, of course, is one of the most difficult symptoms of extreme PTSD. He'd been on a disability pension for 7 years or 9 years because of the pain from his neck. He pulled up his shirt, showed me morphine patches on his belly. By the end of our session, and it was a long session, it was about 2.5 hours, by the end of our session he had full movement in his neck, in his body, his pain had gone, and he was back at work as a panel beater in 4 days. That was 6 years ago. He hasn't been angry like that since. He says he hasn't even needed a Panadol for the pain. And I'll explain why the pain, why the physical pain gets stuck as well as the emotional pain. We'll get on to that. And there are so many other stories. There was a woman who'd had a neurological episode and one hemisphere of her brain had shut down. She was a single mum with a 4-year-old and she couldn't speak. She could only stutter. And she was an opera singer. So she was in real trouble. And the neurologist said it would take her 2 years to begin to get her speech back if she had intensive therapy. So by the end of the second session with TRTP, she had her speech back. And then there's the commando with extreme PTSD. You know, the 18-year-old girl with extreme PTSD who tried to hang herself on several occasions. All these people have had fabulous outcomes. The 18-year-old who had extreme anxiety, OCD, and was continually digging holes in her face, in her arms. I'm talking big holes. She'd had several stints in hospital. She'd been told that she'd never be able to work. She'd be on medication for the rest of her life, and she'd probably have to be cared for. So what's happened to her? Well, she's moved interstate, enrolled in university, got away from her toxic family situation, and she's doing really, really well. Go her. I could go on and on telling you what the outcomes are for those clients who go through the TRTP 3-session process, and occasionally it's 4. This process is so enormously powerful. These are the results that we expect. And the clients I've spoken to just now are pretty extreme cases. This process is equally as effective for the less extreme cases, even, dare I say it, garden variety anxiety and depression. And isn't it dreadful that depression and anxiety are so rampant that, you know, we call them garden variety. People living in pain. There's so much pain out there. The thing is that what we're using, what we're doing, is too slow. Now, slow incremental change is just not cutting it for those who do change. So we need to do something different. So this class is to introduce you to something that's different. It's revolutionary. And it may just change how you look at mental health. So I could go on and on for hours with stories. Stories of my clients, of the practitioners that I've trained. And who are the practitioners I've trained? Where do they come from? Well, they're GPs, they're anaesthetists, they're psychologists, psychotherapists, social workers, nurses, paramedics, hypnotherapists. And these are the people who make up our extraordinary back-end community. Because after the training, there's a marvellous community, a warm, generous group where egos are left at the door and there's strong, strong mutual support. They report that there's no peer support like it. So they're no longer alone in doing their work. And what are they saying? Well, like a new GP. She's not a new GP. She's a very experienced GP, but she's a new graduate of this program. And she's only done about 5 clients so far. And she says, all my admittedly only 5 so far patients are going from severe or extremely severe on their DAS-21 to normal. The last one said she keeps waiting to feel the old feelings of stress, depression and guilt, but they're just gone. She says, I know that this is what others regard as normal for TRTP, but I had to experience it for myself. And a social worker who says there's no other modality or intervention that even comes close to the effectiveness of TRTP. I can say to my clients, hand on heart, this process works, because it does. And from another psychologist, usually better results from 3 sessions of this than months of other counselling and various therapies. A clinical psychologist, TRTP is by far the most powerful and effective process I offer to my clients. It's transformed my practice and me personally. Yes, this process is transformative, not just professionally, but personally. So let's go on. Let's talk about what this process is. To do that, we need to understand something of the physiology of trauma. Let's just take away the word trauma, shall we? And let's replace that with distressing events. This is my model. This is how I see things. The distress of life builds up. It's like the pressure in a balloon. And at some point, and it can be the straw that breaks the camel's back or a catastrophic event, the pressure gets too much and we blow out. We blow out into anxiety or depression or PTSD or physical illness. Something has to give. There's just too much pressure. And so what happens at that point? Let's just look at a normal person, shall we, if such a being exists. A normal person lives down here at calm. They have a distressing event. Of course, they release stress hormones. The event passes and they self-regulate. Now that's key. They self-regulate. They don't have to think about it. Their system just brings them straight back to calm. They have a life-threatening event. They go up here to fight, flight, freeze. The event passes, and what happens? They self-regulate. They don't have to think about it. Their whole system brings them back down from that hyper-aroused state. And that's the story of their life. What happens with trauma, however, is we get stuck sometimes up here in fight, flight, freeze, re-triggering continuously. And for some people, unfortunately, they're right up here. And what does that feel like? It feels like the accelerator and the brake, pedal to the metal. Freeze and fight and flight all at once. It's like doing burnouts in the same place. And there's no respite, there's no rest. It's exhausting. And physical systems begin to break down. So this is PTSD. And it's a spectrum from mild to off the charts severe. But let's take away that word trauma and talk about distressing events. Because we think of trauma, we think of war, refugees. But some houses, I won't call them homes because they're far from that, some houses are war zones. The things that some people experience are just horrendous. We know why people get PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's about trauma. But let's talk about anxiety. What causes that? And I would say to you, I'll put to you, that anxiety is not the issue. Anxiety is a symptom. Because what sits behind anxiety, and there's lots of people watching this who've experienced anxiety, some who are still in the throes of that. It's a dreadful thing. You'll understand what I'm talking about when I say anxiety is a symptom of the whole being screaming, "I'm not safe." A lot of you will know that feeling, you'll be familiar with it. A lot of people go, "Oh, that's what the feeling is. It's just I'm not safe." And why am I stuck in that feeling of I'm not safe? It's because dreadfulness has happened in the past. You know, the distress in that balloon. Dreadful events have happened in the past and my body hasn't dealt with them, hasn't put them into memory. So what's happening is that at the time of a distressing event, the body releases stress hormones. Adrenaline, all the usual stress hormones. And what can happen is the librarian of the brain, the hippocampus, can just shut down and say, "No, I'm not doing that." And the hippocampus doesn't take the event and bring it to an end. It doesn't put it in the right manila folder, in the right drawer, in the right filing cabinet, in the warehouse of memory. And then shut the door. Instead of that, what happens is that memory actually gets stored in the unconscious as a videotape loop that's continuing all the time. It's on all the time. And the unconscious runs every chemical reaction, every electrical response in the body. So the body is responding all the time as if that event's happening, and that event's happening, and that event's happening. It's happening now, it's happening now, it's happening now, it's happening now. So the whole body is in this state of I'm not safe. And so we're looking for what else is going to go wrong. So here we have anxiety. Someone in high anxiety, often peaking with panic attacks. And then we've got, you know, all the various other levels of anxiety. So the whole lot here is a spectrum. The spectrum of anxiety, and it's all the same thing. Anxiety is simply a symptom of the being screaming, I'm not safe. Why? Because of dreadfulness that's happened that's never been stored away in memory and the door shut. It's stored as videotape loops in my unconscious, and my body is experiencing it as it's happening now, it's happening now, it's happening now, it's happening now. The conscious mind doesn't know this is going on. The conscious mind is only observing what's happening in the body and how the person's feeling. How am I feeling? I feel on edge, I feel jittery, I can't relax. But it's because of these videotape loops in the unconscious. And the unconscious runs every electrical response, every chemical reaction in the body. So that's anxiety. Well, what about depression then? All right, let's talk about depression. It's exactly the same thing. It's just causing a different physical response. It's causing shutdown. But it's caused by the same thing. It's stuck in the freeze response. The anxiety is fight and flight. The depression is freeze, shutdown. But it's all a symptom. The depression, the anxiety, the PTSD, it's all a symptom of the same thing. The whole being screaming, I'm not safe. So what do we have to do? Well, Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk, all the top trauma specialists agree now that we have to get someone to this space. It's over and I'm safe now. Well, they actually say that you have to have the body understand it's over. That's what they say. But I go further. I say the body and the unconscious has to know that it's over and I'm safe now. It's a different thing. It's a resolution, the I'm safe now. So if you say it out loud with me, you'll understand when you feel it in your body. Just say with me, it's over. You ready? It's over. Good. And say it again. Feel what happens in your body. Ready? It's over. Good. And once more. It's over. Good. And now say it's over and I'm safe now. And feel what happens in your body. Ready? It's over and I'm safe now. It's a different feeling, isn't it? Try it again. Ready? It's over and I'm safe now. And that's what TRTP does. It brings people from I'm not safe to here. It's over and I'm safe now. And these symptoms, because that's what they are, the symptoms simply disappear. Because those videotape loops in TRTP, we shut down, we close off those videotape loops. The hippocampus comes back online. It's like doing a factory reboot on your phone. Have you ever done that? It can be frustrating, but you return your phone to how it was when you first bought it. You do a factory reboot. We do the same thing with people with TRTP. And the symptoms simply disappear because we shut down all those videotape loops of the distressing events that are running in the unconscious. The person goes from up here, I'm not safe, to down here, it's over, and I'm safe now. And what happens at that point, which is it's a 3-session process, and this happens at the end of session 2. What happens at that point is that the practitioner actually witnesses the client's body just let go. Sometimes a client will lose 10 or 20 years from their face. Sometimes if it's extreme PTSD and they've got that Parkinson's-like tremor, sometimes that will just slow down and stop. Sometimes it's extreme, like with Annie, who'd had a neurological event and one hemisphere of her brain shut down and she couldn't speak. And by the end of the second session, it came online. So what happens is that when you actually witness extraordinary healing in your client, you actually see change. You go home exhilarated rather than exhausted. That psychiatrist that I spoke of, she related a funny story because she cleared her books in less than a couple of months after doing the training. So much so that a delegation of from the receptionist pool in the big medical centre where she worked, they sent a small group of receptionists to ask her, what are you prescribing now? Is it legal, and are we implicated by being on the premises? Because we've been seeing your patients coming for years and now they're walking out well. So what on earth are you doing? What on earth are you prescribing? They were very concerned. She explained, no, I'm getting everyone off meds now. They're actually well. So how do we do this? As I said, it's a 3-session process. In the first session, what we do is we clear the slate. We have to get rid of the negative unconscious core beliefs. So you know about unconscious or subconscious core beliefs. But even before we're born, we're taking on ideas of who we are, how the world works. And then we're born. For some people, that's a life-threatening event in itself. And then for the first 7 years or so of our life, we're like a little sponge, and we are branded with these ideas that we take on perhaps from an adult in authority, like the year 1 teacher who says you'll never be able to get a job because you're too stupid, or something dreadful like that, or our tiny person's perception of what's going on. And this runs our life. There's a reason why the Jesuits of the Catholic Church and the Nazis say, give me a child till they're 7, they're mine for life. Because that's when our programs go in. Let's talk about the mind for a second. Doing a very complex infographic here. If we say this is the conscious mind, we think it's in charge, it's not in charge. It's not in charge. The unconscious or subconscious is the one in charge. It runs every chemical reaction, every electrical response in our body. It runs our behaviours, who we're attracted to, who's attracted to us, the situations that we create in our life. It runs the whole thing based on these programs that we took on when we were small children. So for example, if you're a relationship counsellor and you have 2 people coming, they're a couple, they really both want, with their conscious mind, they want a warm, safe, intimate relationship. And you're assisting them to that. Well, if one or both of them has taken on when they're small the ideas in their unconscious, this branding, this unconscious core belief that it's not safe to love or be loved, because whoever's supposed to love you will hurt you, will betray you, will abandon you, whatever it is. Well then, I'm sorry, but you're going to be pushing the proverbial uphill. It's going to be very hard for those people to get to that place of rich, safe, nurturing, intimate relationship, because the unconscious is running the show. And if it says it's not safe to do that, if it stands back and says, oh, you're dreaming, it's not safe, I'm not going to allow it, there'll be subconscious sabotage. It's just how it is. And in TRTP, we change these in the first session. Because if the unconscious has the idea it's not safe to be well, it's not safe to be out there in the world, it's not safe in that world, I'm going to keep you out of the world, it's not safe to be well, and you're trying to get this person, assist them to health and wellness, it's not going to happen. There'll be sabotage. So in the first session, we change the unconscious core beliefs to the positive. And this changes the entire trajectory of someone's life. It changes the pattern of their life. Talking of patterns, before a client comes for their first session, we send them homework. It's just a list. We just want a list. We give them a very small template so they can't write an essay. We just want dot points. The age you were, the name of the event and who was there, the top 10 to 12 distressing events of their life. For a lot of clients, this is huge ahas, because they get a snapshot of their life and they say, it's the same thing again and again and again and again. Just different people. With abuse, for example, yeah, there it was at home when I was a little kid, there it was at school, there it was in that relation, it's just different people. And for the therapist, it's There we are, there's the snapshot, there's the pattern of that person's life. Why do they have that pattern? They have that pattern because the unconscious has been branded when they're small with the ideas, the core beliefs that run that pattern. So for example, if there's a pattern of abuse, there are certain unconscious core beliefs that would be locking that in. Such things as, I don't matter. And I'm going to swear here, sorry. But I'm shit and I deserve to be treated like shit. I deserve to suffer. I deserve to be punished. And so what happens is when we change that in here, our life changes. We stop running the same patterns. So we do that in session 1. And what happens then is the person's experience of who they are actually shifts. Because what's an identity? It's a few thoughts thrown together about who we are. Where did those thoughts come from? Hello. They came from when we were very young. When we were branded. They're not necessarily true, these thoughts, but they become our identity. We create this delusion of who we are. And someone meets us and says, oh, you're like this and this and this. And we go, no, we're not. You don't know who we really are. They see the reality more than what we do. Because we create this delusion of who we are based on the unconscious core beliefs that we took on as a tiny child. That small person's perceptions. It's a bit sad when you're in your 60s and running on a 3-year-old's perceptions that you've taken on as truth. So it's very fast, it's very effective. We do that in session 1 to give us a clear slate to go ahead to where the rubber hits the road in session 2. For a lot of people, that in itself is transformative. Where they meet, we introduce them to the truth of who they are without those erroneous beliefs. Then they're ready to go into session 2. And what do we do in session 2? We take the emotional charge out of the past. Van der Kolk and Levine, they say 2 things have to do to get somebody from I'm not safe to that hyper-aroused or hyper-depressed state to I'm safe. And of course I say I'm not safe and it's over and I'm safe. 2 things have to happen. 1, the person has to be moved to an empowered position in regard to what happened in those distressing events. And 2, the body and the unconscious have to know that it's over and I'm safe now. So that's what we do in the second session. In the third session, we create the future, because people who are in a very stuck state are not future focused. So we do that in the third session. How do we do all of that? Well, it's quite simple, really. As I said, these videotape loops are stuck in the unconscious. Stuck on rewind. They're in the unconscious, they're not in the cognitive mind. And this is why cognitive therapies, what can I say? They're slow, and sometimes they don't work at all, because trauma or distressing events are not stored in the conscious mind. If they were, we could just get over it and move on. But they're stuck as these tape loops in the unconscious. So what do? We speak to the unconscious in the language of the unconscious. What is the language of the unconscious? The language of the unconscious is the imagination. 2 words, just imagine. And what happens then is the critical facility steps aside, and we can go anywhere in our imagination, just as we do in dreams. Anything is possible. So we step the client through various scenarios that they richly imagine, and the body and the unconscious believe that what we imagine is real. The body and the unconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. Let's do a little exercise that will demonstrate this. So just imagine. There we are, those 2 words. Just imagine you have a big juicy lemon. and you cut it in half. It's very drippy. And you cut a wedge off it. And you know what you're going to do? In a moment, you're going to, my mouth's already going. You're going to sink your teeth into this drippy lemon and suck all the sour goodness out of it. So you ready? There's so much juice and it's so sour. I don't know about you, but I have a complete saliva response going on. My body is behaving as if that actually happened. Most people watching this will have the same response. The body in the unconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So we use that facility to create various scenarios to move someone to a place where they are in an empowered position in regards to what happened in those distressing events. And then we speak directly to the unconscious in the language of the unconscious, saying, it's over, you're not there anymore, and you're safe now. And the result of that is people come from this aroused state of anxiety or the shutdown state of depression and whatever else is going on to it's over and I'm safe now. Pretty simple, really. The videotape loops get stopped and the symptoms simply disappear. Because the cause, which was the distressing events that have been left in those videotape loops in our unconscious, are stopped. The anxiety, the depression, the OCD, the hoarding, whatever it is, the PTSD, just gone. So that's what TRTP does. So you use this with clients and it's fast and it's effective. And it's long lasting and there's no re-traumatizing because the client doesn't even have to tell the story if they don't want to. We don't need the story, we've got the homework, that's all we need. You know, I had a soldier who had off the charts PTSD. And he started telling the story. I said, I don't want the story. Do you want to tell this story? He said, no, I don't want to tell the story. I said, well, don't tell the story. The relief was palpable. Oh, he'd geared himself up for another counsellor. So what happens when you're dealing with clients using TRTP is you see change. It's fast, it's effective, it lasts, it works, and there's no re-traumatizing. So you go home in awe, actually witnessing your clients with their extraordinary, profound change. You go home knowing, yep, I've done good today. That client's life has absolutely changed. There's a tsunami of pain out there. The suicide rates. And that's not even including the single car accidents that the farmers use so that the families get the insurance. In my own family, there's been 3 suicides. That's a lot in one family. And the ripples of that go out and out. The anxiety, the high levels of anxiety in little kids even, and deep depression and despair. We've got to do something, people. We've got to do something that's faster, that's more effective, that lasts. Instead of sitting back and talking about stuff, let's actually fix it. Because Neuroscience 101 will... It's just obvious, the more you talk about something, the more neurons come and join the party. And you get a super highway of pain. We've got to do something different. This is different. We don't talk about what happened, we just fix it. If this resonates with you, do something. If this compels you, if you've been looking for something that actually is fast and that works, do something. We have training programs, we have student intake several times a year. It's an 8-week training program. Go to therichards.traumaprocess.com. There's an outline of the training on the training page and you can click through underneath this video on this page, you can click through to make a 20-minute Q&A phone conversation appointment and have any of your questions answered. We have to do something different. What we're doing is not working, people. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for investing your energy and your time in this masterclass. Go gently and join us. Thank you.